Hey, and welcome back to my RimWorld beginner tutorial series. We are on video number 3, and in this video I will be running through the in-game UI, so all of the menus, submenus, and just going through how you can find various bits and pieces, a little bit of information about it, but not a ton, because there are so many kind of like details that you can go into here. Trust me, you don't want me to go into all of that. What is better is I just show you roughly, and then in the future tutorials I'll show you how we can apply some of it, and we can go into slight more depth on some of the menus that are required. In the previous two videos, video 1 and 2, I went through setup up until colonist selection. Video 2 was all about colonist selection, and now we're on video 3, UI. I was going to combine this with some stuff that you should do right at the beginning as soon as you land into the game. However, I will say that I'm going to save that for the next video because I didn't want this video to be too long, and it means if you already kind of know UI and you're not interested in learning it this way, you can skip this video and jump to the next one. Also want to do a quick apology for a large gap between my second and third video, this being video number 3 for this series. That's because I was in the UK for just short of a month getting married. So I am now married, back in Canada, and my release schedule should be kind of semi back to normal. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump into this. So when you have kind of entered the game, you'll actually see a kind of box in front of you, which will describe the scenario that you're part of. When you hit OK, that will play. I've kind of skipped past that bit because I needed to save it, and you can't save it with that box up. So I'm going to hit play until we get these pods kind of explode and they'll land in, and then I'm going to start talking through the UI. So up in the top left corner, we have here silver and a number 0. This is to represent how much silver we have in stockpiles currently. Because we haven't set up any stockpiles, obviously everything is 0. This will actually become a list down the side of all items that you have in your stockpiles and the number that you have of them. Minus certain items which don't actually get counted in this section. This is essentially for ones that stack up to a certain number that appear here. For example, if I did make a stockpile, which I wouldn't recommend doing this, but if I made a stockpile here, if I hit play, because you have to play for a second or two, and then hit pause, you'll notice that we have 800 silver, 30 medicine, and 30 components. You can hover over each of them and it'll tell you what it is. But you'll notice that I do have a knife and some armor in there that isn't being registered. That is because it isn't an item that stacks, and therefore it doesn't register in this section, I don't believe. But yeah, that is what this top left corner is, and it will kind of list down. Eventually, if it gets too long, you'll see a little arrow and you can kind of scroll through it. You can also turn it off, which I'll show you how to do a little bit later on. Next, we have your colonists up in this top middle section. So this is our 3 colonists. If you click and drag, you can highlight them from the top. You can also highlight them on screen. They'll supersede anything else. If you see, if I highlight over here, I'll get steel. If I highlight here, I'll get other important items. But if I highlight over them, even if I select those other things, they supersede any other highlighting. You can also click on them individually, and you'll notice down here it will tell me what I have highlighted. So 3 humans, and we also have this button here for drafting. This, when you draft someone, they're essentially ready to fight, and you can give them fighting instructions. You can select them individually, and you can find out a little bit more information here. And you can also right click and drag, and it will change their order. I like to personally order these from melee, range, and then non-violent in sections. Obviously, feel free to arrange them how you wish. You can also notice this like blue bar behind them. As this gets full, that's how happy they are, and if it's empty, that's how unhappy they are. One of my favorite mods is something called color-coded mood bar, that instead of being this kind of very blue on blue kind of background situation, it will show red when they're really unhappy and green when they're very happy, and etc, etc. So we won't go into too much detail on mods in this one, just pointing that one out is one of my favorite UI mods. Next in this top section, we have the learning helper. This is essentially a small Wikipedia that gives you a little bit of information about a ton of different topics. It's not as in-depth as the actual wiki, and you can turn it off to get rid of it hovering around in this top corner, but it can be useful if you're a new player just to remind yourself about various bits and pieces. Next, we have the screen in front of us. The sort of where the game plays out, if you like. You can see that we have our colonists in front of us. Just a couple of quick navigation things. You probably have already realized this, but WASD will move your camera. The arrow keys will also move your camera. I prefer WASD because it's nearer to other shortcuts. You can also hold down middle mouse button and move around. And I believe if you're on full screen, you can go to the edge and it will scroll out. I'm not on full screen, so I don't believe that works when you're not on full screen. The zoom wheel will scroll you in and out, and that's kind of how you navigate this area. And then I will come down to this section later on, but there is your timing options as well, which is another reason why WASD is better, because space will take you between pause and the most recent time speed up. But before we come over to this section, I'm going to actually work from this left corner and across. We have our architect menu. This is where you go to set up zones, select mass orders, or build. That is essentially what this menu is for. You have orders, which gives you all these mass orders. I won't go into detail on all of them. They're kind of self-explanatory, and we'll get to using them in future videos. Zoning, so this is how you set up example areas where you want people to be able to allowed to be able to go. This is also applies to intelligent animals as well as your human colonists. You can kind of set up safe zones and work zones and things like that. Home zones, this essentially is the area that your colonist will clean and put out fires. It's also the only zone that will automatically be filled out if you have a various setting on, which we'll get to later. Your stockpiles, dumping stockpiles, growing zones, it's all your zoning. And then all your building sections, they're pretty self-explanatory on where they're labeled. Furniture is furniture, production is if it creates something, it's probably in the production section. You can also search for it by typing in, so if you type door, it will come up with door. If you type bed, it will come up with your beds. If you can't find it in any of the sections, miscellaneous is the place to look. That's sometimes where in the past I've struggled to find something and just gone misc and it's there. Next we have the work tab. This is where you tell your colonists what tasks to do and in what order of priority. When we don't have manual priorities, this is X here, when it's not selected, you'll get these ticks, and that will from left to right be what they work on. So this person will firefight before they construct, before they smith, before they clean, etc. The problem with this, you have no like minute control. They're either doing it or they're not doing it, and they're either doing it first or they're doing it last. So from left to right. This is where manual priorities comes in. This gives you numbers from 1 to 4. So 1 being the highest priority and 4 being the lowest priority. So for example, if I did something like this person would mine before they do anything else. Then they would become a patient, bed rest, basic warden. They would run through the 3s. And then finally they would do firefighting last. Whereas if I make this 1, they'll do firefighting, then mining, then patient, being a patient. I'm going to set this back to 3 and in fact turn this off because I will go into more detail on how to set this up in a future video. But essentially that's how you set up work priorities. And you'll probably be in here quite frequently, especially when you get a new colonist join. You can also copy to various other people, if you want them all to do the same thing. I would highly recommend not doing that unless you have 2 colonists that are very similar. Next section we have is the schedule section. This allows you to set up their schedule throughout the day, what they are doing between various hours. So anything basically gives them the choice of what they do. So if they need to sleep, they'll sleep. If they need to eat, they'll eat. If they need to do recreation, they'll do recreation, etc. They basically, or if they have nothing else to do, they're fully satisfied, they'll then go and do work if there isn't something else they can do. Sometimes they'll go and do work over recreation because their recreation isn't low enough. It usually kind of keeps like a nice balance. However, they won't work as hard or as often or as long, and they will get distracted from their tasks. So they'll run to the other side of the map, do something, and then run back to do some recreation, and then they'll run back out again. The best thing to do is set up like a chunk of work time, a little bit of recreation, and I'll go into detail on this on a future video. But yeah, anything means anything. Work means they're working. Recreation means they're focusing on recreation, and sleeping is when they should be sleeping. If they no longer need sleep, they're fully rested, they will actually just switch to doing anything, by my understanding of how it works. You can also select what areas they're allowed in. So you can see here, because I created that stockpile, we have a home zone. That means they will not leave this blue square, essentially, when you select it like that. Unrestricted is unrestricted, and then you can set up zones for them. You can do that also through this zoning section in the architect section, where you can select, area 1, this is area 1. They have to remain within area 1. You can also manage the areas, rename them, stay. You can create new areas, you can invert them, so this means they will not be allowed in that inner pit. You can kind of invert it. That's kind of easy when you've got like say you've got an insect infestation, sorry, I should say. You can select the infestation and then reverse it and tell them, that's the area you're not going, essentially. But yeah, you can manage your areas from here, and this is a good way to kind of be like, everyone stay put, everyone go back to unrestricted and doing whatever. Here's your work zones, that sort of stuff. Next, we have the assign section. This essentially gives them what they can wear, what they can eat, and what they can take in regards to drugs. Now, to begin with, you won't have much choice in terms of what they can wear because you won't have made much clothing. Same with what they're eating and same with what they're taking in terms of drugs. But just know that you can come into here and kind of say, anything could be people that you don't care what they wear. Your worker could be someone that you want to wear particular items, etc., etc. And then you can select which one. So these guys are all selected on anything, but I could select them all on worker. I'm going to leave them on anything. Same with food restrictions. You can come in and you can kind of say, oh, I don't want everyone eating lavish meals. I want to save that for special occasions for boosting mood and stuff. So you could turn off lavish meals. You can manage all your food restrictions from here, and this kind of allows you to kind of do it. You can delete them. You can create new ones. It's super in-depth and super handy. And finally, you have drug policy. This is the menu, obviously, where you can edit your drug policy. You can say, oh, this is for when they're addicted to it. This is where you want them to select just to use this drug for recreational. And this is where you want them to take on a scheduled amount. You can also tell them how much you want them to keep in their inventory if they've got this selected. So they carry around that drug. So if they're out in the field doing some plant work, they, instead of running all the way back to drink a beer, they could just drink a beer in the field and then continue, if a little bit drunk while doing it. So yes, this is how you manage those policies. There's 3 other things here. So for starters, this is if they're attacked, what they should do. This is automatically set to flee. I would recommend leaving it there because usually if they're attacked and they start to flee, it usually gives you a bit of a time to react to the situation. You could also, if they were a heavily armored melee unit, you could say just melee attack back and they will just like batter them with whatever weapon they have, or they can ignore it and they just continue doing their task being hit until they go down, essentially. I tend to leave it as flee unless I have a heavily armored melee unit who I will then say, yeah, go ahead and attack back and we'll get people to them as quick as I can. The other section we have is this here. This is to say what medicine they are allowed to have used on them. So this is currently set to best quality, but you can set it to lower amounts. I would usually recommend setting it quite low and then only increasing it when there was a dire medical situation. This will just mean that you don't use up medicine unnecessarily. Finally, we have carrying. This is to tell them what drugs they should carry in terms of medicine, what medicine they should carry and how much of it. So I think Vaya is our doctor. We should probably tell him to carry 3 medicine. This just means they don't have to run all the way to the stockpile to pick up medicine and then run all the way to the injured party. They will probably already have medicine on them, unless they've used it up, in which case they'll have to make the move. But yeah, that is what the assign section is for. Next, we have animals. This will list all of the animals that are part of your colony that you own. And now this might be ranching animals, such as in this case we have a yak, or it could be intelligent animals, such as a dog. And you'll notice that when you have dogs, you'll have multiple sections here where you can tick boxes to say, oh, I want to teach them to guard, I want to teach them to attack, I want to teach them to rescue, I want to teach them to haul. In my opinion, teaching them to haul and rescue are the 2 most important ones, because hauling just means they'll run around and they'll carry stuff from the field to your stockpile. It just means 1 less trip for your colonists. And rescuing just means they'll, if a colonist goes down, they'll go out and rescue that colonist, bringing them back to somewhere that's a bit safer. You can also, from this section, see who their master is. So if they've been trained, if they're a dog, they'll have a master. They'll be usually bonded if they have a master, which means that the master will become very upset if the animal dies. Also, in a flip of that, if the master dies, then the pet can sometimes go mad. We also have the bond. This tells you who they're bonded to. If they're bonded, you can also sterilize them. So if you have a breeding pair, they will just breed until they are either sterilized or you don't have a breeding pair anymore. You can slaughter them. So if you did have a breeding pair, say yak, you could kill all the male babies because you can turn them into meat and leather, keep all the females because they produce milk. You can select what medical care that you want them to use. Usually I'd set this as the lowest until, again, dire medical situations. And then finally, you can release it into the wild. The final 2 sections you can look at here is managed auto slaughter. This essentially means like, oh, say, for example, you only want to have 1 male but tons of females. You can turn this to just 1 male and you can keep the females on infinity. At the moment, we only have 1 male, so there's no breeding that's going to occur anyway. And you can also manage your areas. If it was an animal that was intelligent, or considered intelligent, you could select an area that it is allowed to remain within. This could be like not allowed in a kitchen, not allowed in the bedroom. Type aspect, but because this is a non-intelligent animal, you can see here it says not in a pen. You would usually have to build a pen to put the animal in. We'll go into that into more detail as we kind of play through this tutorial. Next section is wildlife, and this is where we're going to go into the first kind of in-detail submenu. But first of all, this is all of the animals that are on the map. You can see what it is, what its sex is, what life stage. They'll almost always be adults, but you can also see how old of an adult it is. And then you have 2 crosses, which you can turn into ticks. And next to it is a percentage written. And I'll explain what that means. So if you select this, it will mean it will hunt it. If you select this one, it will tame it. So this from this column. This number here is the chances the chances that the animal will attack if it's hunted. So if we hunt this buffalo, say from bow range, there's a 10% chance it will attack back. Now this 10% is kind of like the base rate. If your shooting skill is higher and if your animal skill is higher, this actually becomes a lower percentage. If, say, you're a really terrible shot and really terrible animals, this percentage actually increases. But this kind of like average rate is like 10%. There's a 10% chance this animal will turn around and attack back. And then you'll also see that there's a percentage in the taming column. Essentially, if you fail to tame the animal in your first try, for example, for this cougar, there's a 30% chance this cougar will then attack the person trying to tame it. And there's a 50% chance this cougar will attack when hunted. You'll also notice that the closer you are, it increases the amount up to 3 times, it says. So if you're really close, like right next to this buffalo, it could be 30% chance that it attacks you. Another thing to bear in mind, if you are hunting, say, a buffalo, a herd animal, it can sometimes trigger an event where the entire herd will attack you, not just the one you were hunting. So just be aware that that can actually turn into a pretty disastrous situation if you're not careful. So only send out your best hunters when you're hunting something that has any percentage of attacking back. This section here tells you if it's a predator or not. So this just means that this will hunt other animals on the map. So every so often this cougar will kill, say, a hare or a turkey and eat it. Same with the lynx. Also, every so often, this cougar may hunt one of your colonists. Usually, if there's enough food on the map, that won't be the case. But if it gets scarce, you hunt all the other animals, the chances of that cougar getting hungry and attacking one of your colonists becomes higher. So sometimes it's even worth going out and, as a group, a party of hunters, and killing that cougar. And then just to show you the in-depth craziness of RimWorld, this is a menu within a menu. This is the cougar, buffalo, menu, where you can find out a ton of information about this, or about buffalo. You can see its move speed, its maximum nutrition, its leather type, how much its market value is, how flammable it is, how much meat you'll get at 100% yield, what its minimum and maximum temperature range is for comfortable. Comfortable, not like if it becomes lower or higher than this, they don't immediately die, they just start to develop heat stroke and hypothermia. Just to show you how crazy in depth this goes, you can see their gestation time, their wool type, their market value per year based on what they produce. So much information. You can also see on this specific buffalo what health, if it has any ailments. Some of them will have, and I don't know if we can find one, probably not. Some of them will have actual problems. You see here, like this cougar has a movement of 98% because it has an old gunshot wound. Clearly in the past, someone tried to hunt this and didn't successfully kill it. And then finally, you have records. This is just like really in-depth, statistics on this particular animal. As we've just come into this game, you'll notice that there's basically zeros for everything. But yeah, that's how crazy in-depth this gets. A lot of that information you wouldn't really ever need to look at more than, like, say, once, just because you're curious. But that's how you get to it. The next menu we have is the research menu. This is essentially a research tree. Working from left to right kind of gets the more complex and difficult stuff. Plenty of mods that expands this as well as plenty of the expansions that expand this. But essentially, yeah, to research something, you select it, you select research, this selects it as a research item, and then as soon as you have a research bench and a colonist who has time to research based on their work, so this is this section here, none of ours are set to research right now, will essentially mean that they'll start researching pemmican in this particular case, or batteries, or whatever you want to research as your next item. I'll leave that as is, but that's you can see here, you can kind of select, it tells you what it unlocks, what you need to kind of unlock other bits, and you can see what it unlocks in the future. And if I select this one, you can see, oh, I need these 2 things here to be able to get this, and that will unlock a minigun if I got this particular piece of research. It's a pretty basic research tree, but that's how it works. Next section we have is quests. This, every so often, you'll get a quest kind of pop up on your screen or over on this right hand side. You can select it, accept it, decline it. This will be anything from like a trade offer where a nearby colony wants you to trade with them a certain item, like 10 of a certain item, and they'll usually be higher reward than the item is worth. Or it could be build a structure and guard it for so many days, or it could be accept a raid into your area. There's a bunch of different ones that will come up, and yeah, essentially they give you rewards it could be anything from weapons to furniture to there's so many things that it can be. Yeah, but that's essentially what quests are. You can see the available, the active, and the historical, so you can kind of see what's happening. And then you can also select your reward preferences. So essentially, you can just turn off accepting goodwill. One of the rewards is you get goodwill with a nearby colony, which usually means you can, if you become allies with a colony, they'll actually send help if you ask for it, so many times a year, depending on how chummy you are with them. It also allows you to do trading with them. However, most people like to turn this off because the other rewards tend to be better. I tend to leave it on until like I'm done with trying to deal with a particular colony, and then I may other faction, I may turn it off. Next we have world. Now this will take a few seconds to load. This is why you select 30% instead of 50% in your world creation section, because it loads a lot faster on 30%. This is how you get to your world, and I'll come back to this one in the future, but essentially if you select this down here, you can go, oh, how long is it going to take me to get there? Oh, that will take me 1.5 days. Press escape to get rid of it. You can select other factions. You can select your own faction and create a caravan. This will allow you to say, oh, I want to go here and I want to put this, and this in the caravan. That's for like trading opportunities. We'll come back into more detail in future video when we get to that. It's not something you're usually looking to do immediately, because you're just focused on setting up your base a little bit more. Next we have this kind of statistics menu. This allows you to see your current like wealth graph over 30 days, 100 days, 300 days, all time. You can also select different population or colonist mood graph. Messages, this is just telling you all of the messages. So this is that message that came up as you started the game. You'll get all of your message come up here. So if you click on a thing here by mistake, and then click close and didn't read it properly, you can come back into this messages section and you can have it, you can reread it. And then finally we have statistics, just some basic statistics about what's happening. So you can see here we've been in this game 19 minutes. And yeah, that's kind of that whole section. Most of the time I spend in this section is just in the messages, because I've forgotten what my, the quest is or the raid. Is it attacking immediately, and details and stuff like that. Next we have the factions. I rarely, if ever, go into here. This tells you just the current mentality of factions around you. You can see these ones that don't have numbers means that they essentially will never become your friends. The ones with minus 80 and then minus 30 means they tend towards minus 130. So as time goes on, they'll head towards that number. These two are neutral, and will tend towards neutrality. So if you do something nice for them, you may get 10 goodwill, but it will reduce down to 0 over time. Finally, we have our main menu section. This is just the way you can save the game, load the game, go to your options. You can also review the scenario. This will tell you kind of your crash landed scenario in more detail. Options section, pretty self-explanatory. Quick to main menu, quick to OS, and then a bunch of links to the official wiki, forums, etc. Finally, for this main menu section, I do have some sub-menus just to show you. We have this section down here. This will tell you where we're currently hovering over. So you can see we're outdoors. If we had an indoor section, it would say indoors. It tells you your temperature. Mine's in Celsius. The current weather, so it's currently clear. This could be raining, thunderstorms, snowing, etc. The time of day and the month and date, as well as the season. Then we have our speed. So you can click on these to change them. Between pause and your spacebar, you can switch between pause and the last one you had selected. So you can see I'm switching between 3 and pause. 1, 2, 3 will also change the speed, so 1, 2, and 3 respectively. And yeah, that's how you control the time. Finally, we have this changes this kind of loadout section over here. So you can see it kind of categorizes them into manufactured, medicine, and rural resources. You can turn that on and off. We also have a temperature map. So this, if you had indoor sections at various temperatures, would show red, orange, green, like different colors, depending on how hot or cold it is. We have this, which is automatically rebuild the structure if it gets knocked down. It's up to you whether or not you want this to be toggled. This is just basically just means if a structure gets destroyed for whatever reason by an enemy, your colonists will go and aim to fix it. Automatic home zone, basically wherever you create a stockpile zone or any type of zone, as well as build anything, it will create like a perimeter around it, as well as it itself of home zone. I usually leave this on unless I'm being like super min-maxy. I'd recommend doing the same. Terrain affordance, this just means what can you build on it, and do you need to So, for example, here we have marshy soil, mud, in fact, and water. So obviously we can't build on that. So it shows blue and red. You have fertility. So green is 100%, dark green is 140% fertility, orange is 70% fertility, and if it has no color, there is no fertility. Roof visibility. So this tells you is this what type of roof it is. So we can see here this is rock roof. So it's a thin rock roof, so you could remove it. It also shows you if your buildings are roofed or not. And then I unfortunately we can't show you, but if it's a dark green, that means overhead mountain. You can't remove overhead mountain, and there's other negativity to overhead mountain, which we'll come to at later points. This allows you to toggle your colonists on and off. If you have a lot of them, you may want to turn this off. I wouldn't recommend it though. This, if we had a room, would allow you to hover over the room and it will give you a bunch of stats about the room, how good it is, and beauty and bits and pieces. This is a beauty display, so you can see, like, generally speaking, the ground is 1, but these, like, items give -8, -4, so the beauty in this particular spot, this person is standing right now, is at a -0.7. And various things are more beautiful than others. For example, a marble wall will give 1 beauty, a jade wall will give like 3, I think, etc. This is a good way to be like, oh, how do I increase the mood of my colonists when they're in the dining room? Oh, I could increase the beauty. What's ugly? What's beautiful? Let's make it more beautiful. This just allows you to see zones. So you see this like pink outline here. If I turn that off, you can't see it anymore. I always keep this on because it's always good to see where your zones are. And then finally, this turns off your learning helper. I'm going to turn it off so it's out of the way, but that is your learning helper little bar. And the final couple of menus, I know this has become already a very long video. The final couple of menus I want to show you is if you select your colonists, you have all of these menus here. I'm going to run through them as quickly as possible. So for starters, you can see a little bit of information, including like, should they flee, or you can change it from this section here. You can click on the eye and this tells you a bunch of information about this specific colonist, including things like their bio, health, and records, which you can see from other sections as well. The log is just a log of absolutely everything they've done, essentially. You can see if they've put on something, if they've spoken to someone, you can see a bunch of stuff there if they got an injured. Gear just tells you what they're wearing, what their overall armor rating for what they're wearing is, and a comfortable temperature. You can also then see, oh, what are they wearing? I'm going to look at more information about this. This covers this area with this amount of armor and has this much heat and cold tolerance added to them. It's so much information. Often you just kind of want to look at it collectively. We can see that this person's comfortable temperature range is 6 degrees. So if it got any colder, they would start to get hypothermic over a very long period of time. If it was 4 degrees, it'll take them a long time. If it's -20, they'll become hypothermic very quickly. You can also see what they're carrying. Usually that's not a problem. They'll carry as much as they can. Next, we have the social section. It tells you who their friends are, brothers are, husbands, whatever. It tells you if they're angry with someone, happy with someone, and gives you a little bit of information on what their previous interactions have been. So they've been talking together. Bio gives you a breakdown of their stats and their traits and bits and pieces like that. So you can always come into here, highlight, hover over bits to find out more information. And yeah, that's how you kind of see who's good at what. Needs, this is where you can see a list of all the things affecting their mood. So we can see that they have very low expectations. This will slowly get lower as a boost, but they have currently a +30. This will steadily get lower though. And they've got initial optimism, which will last for 8 days. They've got body mod of frustration. Essentially, they want a body part replaced with something that isn't human. And this will actually just continue to affect them in a negative way. See their food, sleep, recreation, all these things. As they get hungry, it will appear here if they don't eat, if they get uncomfortable, that sort of thing. And you'll be able to sometimes come into here and just be like, oh, I could immediately change that thing and make them a tiny bit happier. Next we have is their health. This lists all of their current health elements, what it's affecting in terms of percentage-wise. You can also select what medicine they should be using. You can also select your defaults from this section. So new colonists, you could say, oh, I want all new colonists to only use herbal. I want all the others to use no medicine. I'd recommend just leaving it on everyone on herbal to start with. We'll go into more detail on how to manage that in the future. You can also select their food restrictions from here, and you can set up all their operations from here. You can also see, we can click on an eye and it will tell you a little bit about what happened. If it was something that happened within the game, it could be he got shot by blah, 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 which caused a scar. But yeah, that is your colonist overview. I know that's a lot. I'm going to try and cut this down a little bit in post. Probably not going to be able to get a ton out of this video, so it is going to be quite a long one. If you already know the UI, you probably already skipped this video. I appreciate if you didn't know the UI for watching this. And on to the next one, we'll get onto something slightly more interesting and useful for you. But thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one, which will be all about what to do as soon as you get into the game